Another way to add impact to paragraphs is the use of Dropcaps. You can see in the top paragraph that it just starts with a plain, ordinary Y. But if I look on the Insert tab, then in the text group, you'll see a number of options, including text boxes, word art, our friend the quick parts, but there's also a drop cap. So if I simply click drop cap and choose dropped, then you can see a little preview of how the Y takes up more than one line on the page. Now that's pretty simple and ordinary, and in fact the Y becomes an object that I could move around and change on its own. But of course, there's always different options available to us, so if I choose drop cap and go to drop cap options, then I can actually, in this one dialog box, change to a really interesting font like Old English, and alter the number of lines that I'm going to drop, and even increase the amount of, or the distance from the text. So I make some changes and hit OK, and now I get really impactful drop caps at the top of the paragraph, like in a storybook. Another really neat addition you can make to a document to spice it up is the use of word art. Down here at the bottom of my document, I have some extra space. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab again, and there's in the text group, there is this option for word art. If I choose word art, there are a lot of presets that I can choose from, and they're actually editable, but we'll just pick one. Maybe this one is nice. And you'll see that you get a dialog box that allows you to choose the font that you'd like to make, as well as the font size. See, a 72-point font is 1 inch tall on the screen, so let's go to a 36-inch font, a 36-point font, which is half an inch tall. And I'm simply going to type cybercrime is fun. And as soon as I enter that text, it gets inserted where my cursor was originally. So I'm just going to drag it down here to another area, and I do have a whole bunch of options here. I can add some shadows to it, which is kind of funky. So now that's changed the style of the image. I'm going to select it again, and now I still have all these different formatting options. And I can even rotate the text a little bit. But I'm going to undo that particular one. I actually like this better than the preset. I can go back to the Home tab, and I can center it on the page, and I can get rid of some of these extra lines underneath it. So there you go. Cybercrime is fun to learn about, but not do. I want to make the top of this document a little more professional looking. So what I'm going to do is format them to be multiple columns. So I'm going to select all the paragraph of text that I have, and if I look up, I was on the Insert tab before, but now I'm going to move to the Layout tab, and you can see under Page Setup there is an option for columns, but it's actually grayed out. And the problem that I've just found is that it doesn't really like putting columns around drop caps. So I'm going to delete my drop cap by selecting the border around it. Notice how my mouse pointer changes shape to the 4-pointed arrow. I can pick that up and move it when it's a 4-pointed arrow, but once it's selected, I'm actually just going to delete it, and I can put a letter Y back there. So I'm going to select all my text in this paragraph, and I'm going to choose columns from the page setup and the page layout tab in the page setup group. And I can instantly choose 3 columns, and I get 3 columns. But of course, just like always, there are more options that you can dive into. So I've got this dialog box where I can change the number of columns to 3 or even 4. I can put a line between the columns, and I can change the width of each column as well as the spacing between each column. There's even a setting that I can choose that will let me make some columns wider than others, but I'm going to leave them all selected the same width, and I can actually apply these 3 columns, this 4-column setting, to the selected text, which was the paragraph I had, to the selected sections, which is actually a division of each Word document, or the entire document itself. I just want selected text, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I have 4 relatively narrow columns, and I have this little line in between them. And if I still like my drop cap, I go back and put my drop cap back on. So there you go, multiple columns. Sometimes you want to add extra information at the side of a document, and if we had multiple columns, and in fact if I had columns that were empty, I could use some extra space in order to place a pull quote. Now in order to do what's called a pull quote, which is usually just some text that is emphasize somehow, we're going to use a text box on the Insert tab. So if I insert a text box, you'll notice that there's an alphabet quote or a sidebar and different options, or I can just draw one. I'll actually choose one of the presets, even though I'm not a big fan of the presets. But you can see that it simply appears there and it says type a quote from the document or other summary of an interesting point, and then I can position the text wherever I want. So I could say something like, some cyberspace crimes, such as other types of crimes, are new and specific to the online world. Oh, little spelling mistake there. So I can go over that and fix it. There, I've got a text box or a pull quote that I can move around into any location. And just like I could do with the image before, I could actually I can use text wrapping and bring it in front of the text. But in fact, what I'm going to do just for illustrative purposes is I'm actually going to format the style of this box to be quite interesting. And I'm going to make the font a little bit bigger. And you can see that the text box automatically expands. You may also want to add what are known as callouts to your document. On the Insert tab, also in the Illustrations group, we have shapes. And you can see that there are a large number of shapes, so I can very easily draw, let's say, a five-pointed star onto my document. And then I can choose a more interesting format for it. And I could, of course, rotate it, move it into the corner, and position it behind text. Now that might be something that makes a little more sense. Now, specifically with callouts, under the Shapes option, I do have basic shapes, and there's a little smiley face or a lightning bolt. And down at the bottom, there are what are known as callouts. So I'm going to choose one of these little thought bubbles, and I can draw an oval callout. Oh, it's actually a speech bubble, and I can say that if I move the object so that it looks like the fencer is talking, then I can simply click onto it and I can type the text that's required, because it's actually a type of text box. And you can see in the top corner where I'm now formatting this text box, I can say something useful like, learn about cybercrime by reading below. And then of course we go back to the Home tab, do some formatting of the text, and we also might want to change the formatting. Oh, that's about all we can do actually. Let's leave it like that. You can just click outside of the image, and now it is perfectly ready and looks like the fencer is speaking. I think we've learned all we can from this single document. We've learned how to put a header at the top of the document and a footer at the bottom, and you can actually see that as we scroll down each page, I will always have a footer on every page, and I will always have a header on every page, and I never have to type it again. I also used WordArt, I used a text box, I put some shapes into the background. We've talked about moving shapes in front of text or behind text, and I've also showed you what a callout is and how to wrap text tightly around unusually shaped images. And finally, we even talked about Dropcaps. So what we'll do next is look at formatting a multiple page document. Thank you for watching.